Hey, FlimsyLunchTray here, and welcome to World of Warships, where today I'm going to be looking at the hull, the new Tier 10 Premium American Destroyer for 60,000 Research Bureau points. I have a whole video on Research Bureau. I'll put it like at the end of this video if you're kind of interested in learning more about the Research Bureau and how to pick up the ships and how to grind the Research Bureau points. But the hull has been an interesting experience so far, excuse me. I like the ship quite a lot so far. I would say definitely it's a bit toxic behaviors in terms of what you can do with the ship, and this video I think illustrates the toxic behavior rather well. And so we're going to get into all of that. So first is to talk about the build. I'll try to put it on the screen here what my build is. And one of the things I really wrestled with the hull is if I wanted to have concealment on the command or not, because this is a gunboat. I mean, it's like the Sherman exactly. It has the same rudder shift, turning circle radius, same torpedoes with the very crappy firing angles. So firing torpedoes is kind of an afterthought. So I often find myself just forgetting to just randomly spam them and hope you get lucky and hit something. So it's a ship that definitely relies on its guns, but it doesn't, how to phrase this, there are other boats that do even maybe the gunboating a bit better, so to speak, with than hull. I mean, there's nothing more annoying than trying to hit something like a Marceau, a Kleber, a Haverosk, you know, that are just kind of spamming you at range because they tend to have a little bit better speed and more guns, so to speak. So hull has been an interesting boat for me. So I've like, is it a frontline destroyer? Is it like a second line destroyer? And what I found with this ship is that I've built it for full conceal. So we're rocking 6.5, which is decent, right? At the high tier. I mean, there are a good number of other destroyers with a higher concealment, better concealment than ours. But I've found that the concealment has worked best for me, and I'll maybe talk about that a little bit later. But what makes the ship so interesting is rather than compared to the Sherman, you know, we don't get a hydro, we don't get the smoke screen, the American smoke screen. But what you do get is you get a engine boost. We do have a defensive AA, but we get a super heal. So it's a pretty nasty heal that you get here on the hull. So I've had games, I think I've done 50, I've damage received 50 to 60,000 damage, and this is a 30,000 hit point destroyer, or 29,850 to be specific, with the Charlie Kilo combat signal. So it's a destroyer that's kind of designed to take abuse, to take hits. Like, you will be trading hit points for damage here in the game. If you play it like, if you're a destroyer player who struggles, one, with gunboating, and two, you don't like to lose hit points, like you're a little bit more shy, then hull is definitely not going to be for you. It's a boat that requires you to be a bit bold and gamble at times. So the decision making there is, I think, what makes this ship interesting, but also maybe not for everyone, so to speak. But with that being said, so what's really, besides the repair party, the super specialized repair team, it's the guns. Now these guns can be deceiving, and so let's get into that. But you have three 203mm guns. So hull is now a destroyer in the game with essentially cruiser guns. And we already kind of been, I think, diving into that a little bit with, was it Lubeck, the Hoffman, and Elbing. Those have 150mm guns. But now we have something like hull with cruiser guns, 2 and 3mm guns. So basically, if so to speak, having Des Moines guns on your ship, which means you can easily be citadeling cruisers when opportunity allows for it. I mean, even if like Genons are like completely showing you their stern and they're sailing away, it's possible to citadel them in the butt, as an example. And in arms race, this boat becomes even more disgusting. So let's talk about a little more about the guns, because that's between the guns and the specialized repair teams. That's kind of really the selling point, if you will, on the hull. So it can be deceiving in the sense that when we're talking about the ship, when we're looking at the high explosive and armor piercing, your high explosive does 2,800 damage, which per shell, and that's the highest of any tier 10 destroyer in the game. Like, as an example, the next ship is 2,200 damage per shell. We talk about the armor piercing shells. They have the hardest hitting, they're 4,900. But then the next after that is Hoffman and Elbing at 4,100. So you can think like, oh, like this is a pretty disgusting ship in terms of how much damage these guns do. But again, if once we start talking about salvo damage, then hull doesn't compete. Hull falls back because these are 2 and 3mm guns, where, you know, like Elbing, what is it that Elbing has? Elbing has, oh, come here, 6 150mm guns, where you have 3 2 and 3mm guns. So hull falls off in terms of the salvo damage. Quite hard comparing it whether we're talking about the armor piercing or the high explosive. But it is really sweet when you do land the citadels. It feels quite rewarding. And the gameplay you're going to see me now doing with hull is kind of where hull shines the most. One of the reasons, and I like doing the concealed build so far, is because you have to deal with submarines and DD players, and this was like I think this is my 7th battle. Yeah, it's my 7th battle so far in the hull. And you have to kind of deal with the destroyers up front and kind of bully them and abuse them. And like, so the Xian Yang, he's bullied and he's just away. So we're not going to have to deal with him. And now we really get to do what hull does best, and that's just kind of sitting here farming. So you can see, switching to the armor piercing, like there's a 2,100 damage salvo, it's 1,700, you know, we get 1,000. Then we're going to be switching back to the armor piercing, or high explosive, as he sails away. And since these are 2 and 3mm guns, we pin 34mm. So a lot of the ships at the higher tier that are covered in 32mm, you just pin through, rather than, you know, nothing kind of more frustrating when maybe you're playing a gearing, and you know you're not getting the full pin damage because you only pin was it 20 something millimeter? I don't remember right now off the top of my head. So that makes hull quite fun. And with the high explosive, if you build into your fire chance, you can get up to 16% from 14%. Or if you took Demolition Expert, then you can add another 1%, so then you're doing 17%. So hull is pretty toxic in terms of like what we're doing right now. I mean, we're a destroyer with cruiser guns. We get an engine boost. We're working on setting fires, this, that, and the other. And I mean, there's nothing more frustrating, like either you're a Kremlin or you're this Alaska player we're going to start shooting here eventually, where we just kind of get to rock back and forth, troll the salvos if you want. Hull's like, you really need the engine boost to like make the most of the ship when you do the open gunboating. With the Sierra mic, I think your speed is 35, and then with the engine boost, which isn't an 8% engine boost, it's a 15% engine boost, you get up to, I think it's around, here I can look here, over 40 knots. So that, when you're doing the open gunboating, especially maybe against a cruiser, you need the engine boost to help you. And it makes, having the engine boost going helps you with your rudder shift, because the rudder is quite trollish. So it's not like as simple as just ducking salvos at times, unless you have given yourself enough range. There's been some instances I've been really close to cruisers, and I'm like, I really want to open up here. Like, let's say they're 7 to 8 kilometers away, but I don't feel confident enough in terms of the rudder shift to just easily be able to avoid those salvos. And I've thought about dropping concealment on the 5th slot on the upgrades and take steering gears mod 2, which reduce your rudder shift time by negative 40%, which makes you almost identical for all intents and purposes to gearing's rudder shift, as an example, if that's kind of something to give you a frame of mind or reference. And that's helpful, right? For sure. But then you're just giving up the concealment. And what I'm finding is, because there's a lot of... When I'm a destroyer player, I find that I'm always usually having the one to deal with the enemy destroyers, unless like I have a solid destroyer teammates. You know, like here I have Doom and the Avero de Bazan. He's really good. He's helpful. I can rely on him. But when you don't have other DD players to rely on, like, and I had a lot of that in my trying to do like an authentic first impressions video from the first to second battle, but it was just, the games were super weird yesterday, and they weren't really making a lot of sense to me. And that's because right now Hull has the advantage that it's a newer ship, and so people don't know what the Hull is capable of. So like, for example, I had a Jaeger charge me. A Jaeger. I had a Yamagiri charge me. Like, you know, while your salvos aren't like super hard hitting, you know, these, when they do pin, I mean, when you get the full pin out of these high explosive shells, you're smacking for 2,800. But granted, you know, you have different characteristics, penetration with the destroyers and stuff. So it's really trollish, to be honest here. Like here I'm opening up on the Trump and the Valparaiso, which we're going to get the Valparaiso. But I'm also taking a gamble here because I'm sitting out here in the open, as we just pick up the Wither. Because Trump can be firing torpedoes, like if I was a Trump, I'd be firing torpedoes. So I wanted going behind the island, but I'm going to be a bit greedy because I want to take out the Valparaiso. The game's close right now. I've liked our team has better positioning right now, but I had several games like that earlier with Hull, and then my team would just completely flop, and then you have to like work on carrying and stuff like that, which is really frustrating. So I don't want him to get away. So we're gonna get General Offensive and the Brother in Arms, and I decide I should have kept reversing, but we take the Torp, but Trump Torps don't hit super hard, so we're gonna eat it. But then you know, Hull is also the type of destroyer, because of the specialized repair teams, like you can make an oopsie, you can make a mistake as a gunboat destroyer get healed or use a big specialized repair team heal, and so you'll see how much damage we heal back from this game. But granted, again, this is also arms race, so the number is going to be quite inflated. So without arms race, I've done games where I've taken 40 to 50,000 damage without an arms race heal ticking, if you will. So you can make mistakes with Hull, right? Where maybe other gunboats that don't get heals, you know, if you make a mistake, you've lost the health. You're not going to get it back. So that's kind of one of the things that sets Hull apart in that sense. So the ship's been interesting to figure out in the sense, like this is the best game I had in Hull of the 7 games I've played in it right now. So I'm still kind of wrapping my head a little bit more around it, but like one of the games I had, it was in randoms yesterday, was like it was a 5v5 or 6v6 in randoms, and it was like on Sleeping Giant. Like, why is that? But our destruction ratio is 4.67, and then damage is 112,000. We're averaging so far. So I've had some really weird games where I wasn't able to get a lot of damage. So where Hull shines is if you can get, so to speak, through the destroyers or submarines that are harassing you, or maybe even a CV. Like the CV's not a really good player, or at least he's having a hard time hitting us. Is if you're not able to get through the destroyers or subs, then you probably won't be farming as much damage, right? Because you need access to the battleships or cruisers to farm them at range. So, you know, we are taking this skill on our commander, 4-point skill, being the main battery expert, to extend our main battery firing range by plus 20%, because we take the main battery mod 3 in the 6 slots to get a faster reload. So the other thing you see is we have Fearless Brawler. So without Fearless Brawler, with the build I have, we're getting a 2.99 second reload time. If we activate Fearless Brawler, then you drop down to 2.69, and then you talk about Adrenaline Rush, then you're talking like 2.5, 2.4. So it can be pretty nasty in terms of the reload, especially when you're playing this ship in an arms race. The numbers get a bit more inflated, if you will. And I'm having a really hard time fishing for the Lian because I thought he was just going to keep sitting there, but he's like reversing further out. An Organ player is going to die killing the Lian, but hey, he got the kill. And it's a test ship, so I'm pretty sure he's a decent player since he's in the BN clan. So then that just puts us down to the CV, who's far off, like I think I9, I10 right now. So we're going to go help our team cap, and we're going to farm a little more base XP between flipping the cap and shooting more planes down. Because the Nakamov just gives up on hunting us, and I think he starts going for the Lian, if I remember right. So overall impression so far with the ship, like I said, it kind of comes to the question of, is Hull worth picking up? If you don't like gunboats, then I would say no. Hull is definitely not for you. The research bureau points are really hard to get. So if you want an example of would I like potentially Hull, you could pick up the Force Sherman, right, for coal. Play around with that and see how you like Force Sherman, and that will give you a decent feel for the ship, except the fact that, it's 8 high explosive and SAP. I think there were 127mm guns. Maybe it's on Sherman, I don't remember. But it's the same configuration, the same feel of the ship, and they just play differently, If you had a hydroacoustic search on Hull, the ship would definitely be broken because you're kind of untouchable. If you like that, the same hydro that Sherman has, that's 5 kilometers or CV sailing away, so I don't understand what's going on here, so that's why I'm pinging the map. You'd be pretty unstoppable with a 5-kilometer hydroacoustic search, and you could really troll submarines, and you could deal with destroyer players more effectively. Yeah, so if you like gunboating, I think you'll probably like Hull. I'm still getting my head more around the ship, as I said, so I'm going to play more games before I do like a Friday highlight and upgrade and commander build video. But you got to see the build, at least in what I'm running so far. I think there's a couple of things that are advantage of Hull right now. In one sense, it's a new ship, so a lot of people don't know fully what the Hull is capable of, so you're going to have a lot of players who, ooh, new ship. So either A, they're going to be focusing you, or 2, they're going to maybe charge you I don't know why Jaeger's charging me, and then you just get to yoink the players. But as players figure it out, they're probably more respectful. Like there was one game I had with an Incheon, and I couldn't citadel in broadside, but I could citadel when he angled, so I was like, what is going on? So it's pretty trollish if you catch cruisers off guard. Granted, you have to be mindful, what cruiser are we talking about and how close are you to said cruiser. The AA is okay. I don't think it was that great. There's nothing home to write about. I'll double check. AA strength. Yeah, it's 13th. But of course, once you pop the defensive AA, that helps. So, one of the things I think about with the Hull and, also Ragnar, those ships both play differently as well, but I really like Ragnar. I don't know if I might like Ragnar more than Hull at the moment still, as I'm getting my head wrapped around Ragnar, because, Ragnar has the radar, so you can be more cap contested. It's a little more, maybe more competitive boat, so to speak, than the Hull. But so we'll find out. But external offensive, Brother in Arms, Dreadnought, Witherer with 10 fires, 234 shell hits, 192,000 damage with the 3 kills. And then on terms of team score, we're going to top the team with 2,257 base XP. There are Lian and then Doom doing quite well for themselves. Yeah, so we pretty much pushed out the DDs early on. And what I found as a weakness with the ship is if you have if there's a pretty competent DD player on the enemy team, and you're having a hard time yoinking him or getting him off the map, then it will really take away from maybe more of your damage and gameplay. So in arms race, you see 60,000 damage received. So because we had the heal buffs, that was 2.6 million potential damage. In a non-arms race game, I had, I think it was 2.3, 2.4. I think it was the first game I had with the Hull. So you can troll for sure. But it works best if you play around the engine boost and that you take the engine boost modification in the second slot. So then you're getting a longer duration time, consumable action time there. So I'll give more of my thoughts soon on the Hull. Right now, I'm liking the ship. I'm liking it more than Sherman. Just the one thing you have, maybe playing Friesland or playing the Sherman, is if a cruiser or battleship player decides to rush you, there's not really much you can do about it because you just don't have the torps, right? You'd have to be more almost bow in to fire your torpedoes at them, charging you, and that would mean turning back into them. And with like turret arrangement on Sherman, she's kind of set more for kiting, since you have 2 of the 3 turrets on the stern versus, you know, on the bow. So then it kind of plays differently than like Druid, you know, as an example. But I think that's one of the weaknesses with the ship. You know, of course, if you have a player who's familiar with Hull, knows that, oh yeah, he can't torpedo me, I'm going to charge him. And you're close enough to charge, that's definitely a disadvantage to playing the Hull. So you're kind of wanting to keep players at arm's length, but at the same time, if you're early on in the game, when opportunities arise, you do want to take on the engagements with enemy destroyer players. Because once you are able to, whether it's you're spotting them, you get them killed, or you help your team get them killed, then it opens up much more opportunities in playing the Hull. So with that being said, if you liked this video, give a thumbs up. If you didn't, give a thumbs down. Subscribe if you want to see more. If you're subscribed, I really appreciate it. Thank you to my Patreon supporters. Until next time, take care.